way of saying that is that they understand human needs, and they may not be themselves human, but they're interested in human qualities. One of the human qualities that's a trap is this thing that we hear a lot about these days, which is complexity. And we're told we should embrace complexity. Well, that's the last thing I want to do. It sounds painful. And I don't know how to do that. And what I'd rather do is tame it than embrace it. But the first thing I want to point out is we tend to think, the culture makes us think, that the complexity is out there. But there are a variety of ways of convincing you. I don't have a lot of time, so I think I'm just going to ask you to take it on faith. And if you don't believe me, Elliot will explain the problem I was posing to him the other day about complexity. Complexity is in the language that you use to understand or to frame the world. Complexity is your problem, not the world's problem. Complexity is your responsibility to figure out how to tame it, how to cut down too many variables, too much of something that is otherwise overwhelming, so that you can then do something. Now, I don't mean to say that that's easy, but I mean to say that it is our responsibility. We can choose to pay attention to every pixel in all of these windows that are streaming at me now. I can choose to say, oh my God, it's complicated. Or I can say, no, my focus is elsewhere. My focus is what I'm saying to you, and whether or not I think you're tracking what I'm saying, and whether or not I want to look at a puzzled face and say, do you have a question? So complexity is really about participating in creating a framing for a problem, rather than a property of the so-called outside world. So this leads to the question, what can we do? What can we do to understand complexity, to frame a way of thinking about a complex situation such that it's simpler but not too simple, simpler but not oversimplified? And I think the first thing to do is, another attribute of a superhero is humility, is to realize what humans do well and what machines do well and not try to confuse the two. And in an age where Jeopardy is played well, don't get me started on that. For 50, 60 years, one hears the stories, well, in 5 years, computers are going to take over. In 30 years, computers are going to be able to upload your whole brain into it. Wrong answer. The answer is, what do humans do well today, and what do systems do well today, and how can we split and make sure that we're worried about the things that computers can't do. Maybe they won't ever do, but they certainly can't do today. So what does that mean? What are the human values that we want? What do we want to pay attention to? Do I want to pay attention to how nice that building looks? Or to your faces? This is my choice. This is my responsibility. So it's our responsibility as designers to see in a way that lets us make the choices of what we want to pay attention to. And this idea of paying attention and vigilance is actually quite important. So if this is a world, and here we are, individually and collectively, participating in this world, there are things happening in the world that we choose to pay attention to. So this is, in a sense, our eye. What are we looking at that's happening in the world? This is the function of an eye. This is our seeing. This is our sensing. This is what we pay attention to. And again, we can choose the things we want to pay attention to. It's very interesting because if we pay attention to something, and then we say, well, what's happening in the world seems to be X, and we really wanted it to be Y, and then we say, all right, what's the difference between X and Y? Therefore, we're going to act in the world. This is a loop that we complete. Of course, we call this feedback, right? And I'm delighted to stand around and to hear the conversations. I think I stopped counting when I got to about 10, just this morning of hearing the word feedback component. Well, the word feedback is very important. It means some signal that's coming to me that says, oh, what does that mean? Am I getting what I want? Do I want what I'm getting? And how do I get something different? And that's important to have this comparison function. This comparison of what is versus what I want, and then to decide what the action is. Now, simple as this is, all intelligent behavior can be thought of in these terms. Because what does it mean to be intelligent? First of all, intelligence is not a property of the system. It's not a property of me. I might have an okay IQ, but if I can't walk across the street without getting killed, that's stupid. So my relations to walking across the street, not intelligent. But if, on the other hand, I want to have a coffee, and Cameron suggests that he's going, of course I go with him. That's intelligent because I'm joining with the environment. I'm working within the constraints and the capacities and the opportunities in the environment. I'm not trying to get the environment to do something it can't do, but I am using it in a coupled way, in a co-evolutionary way to get what I want. This simple loop is fundamentally cybernetic loop. And I'm not here to give a tutorial on cybernetics other than to say that if you ever hear the word cybernetic, I would love it if you remember what it means, which is perhaps not what you think it means. But it comes from a Greek word meaning to steer. In fact, it comes from a Greek word meaning the art of steering. What is the art of steering? The art of steering is saying, I want to go there, I have a goal. That's my Y, that's what I'm heading for. And here I'm not at Y, I'm at X, and in fact I'm being blown way off course. The feedback tells me I'm not going to where I want to be. So I compare the two and I correct, and I come back. And I do that again, and again, and again, and again, and maybe I make the goal. So the lesson here in a cybernetic loop is you gotta have a goal. You may not know what it is, you may have an intuition about it. You may think, I want to improve elderly care, I want to improve poverty, I want to improve these things. This is a general goal. But it's only through action that I learn whether or not I'm getting somewhere. So, as Heinz von Forster used to say, in order to see, act. Because it's only through action and interaction that something happens that you can make sense of and that you can get somewhere with. Now, the good news and the bad news is all right here. This is very simple. But systems are much more complicated than that. There are many feedback loops. There are many interactions. There are loops within loops within loops. Fine. But what is our responsibility? Our responsibility is to collaborate on why, to collaborate on what our desires are, aka our goals. Because if I say my goal is X and I want you all to follow my goal, it's not very democratic. But if we together can come to some consensus, that's hard. That's really hard. In fact, some kinds of problems are so hard they're called wicked problems. A wicked problem is a problem that's so hard that we don't even know how to go about fixing it. We're going to try. A classic example is homelessness. What's the problem with homeless people?
They don't have a home.
They don't have a home. Why don't they have a home? Why don't they have a home? They can't afford it. So the problem is they don't have any money? Is that the problem with homeless people? Well, maybe there isn't enough inexpensive housing. Or maybe there is inexpensive housing, but they have a problem with interacting with society. They're considered...
The other problem is the assumption that everyone should have a home.
Brilliant. So that reframes it completely. It says, the problem of homelessness is not that people don't have homes, it's something else. Wait a minute. Here we are, we're talking about something that seems so wrong, homelessness. And already we have a multiplicity of possibilities for defining what our goal is. This is the problem of the kinds of the class that we're trying to solve here. So take, I almost said faith, take hope out of the idea that complexity is something that we can tame by deciding how to frame the problem through what should be a collaborative process of understanding, which requires action in the world to get there. It's a lot more than just Post-it notes and markers. But through these things our understanding grows, our ability to collaborate grows. We participate together and we formulate together a system that is intelligent, not because we're so smart or because we have a particular education, but rather through interaction. We've come to understand the impact of those actions, which creates a model of what we want and how we want it, and that lets us go forward. So those would be my comments.
Well, thanks, Tom. Thank you.
So what I'd love you to do is kind of get back in your groups and just